Hi there. Welcome to Classroom Assessment, EDF 4430, Section 1. My name's Laura. I'm going to be your instructor for this semester. I wanted to take a moment and talk to you about course goals. So these are sort of the ideas and objectives that we're trying to get into out of this course and into your heads, right? So we're really focused on trying to wrap our heads around what in the world standardized assessment is really resulting in. So not just the immediate impact on the students, but also what its impact is on you, how they come about being, period, where they come from, whether they're rigorous or not, what sort of things affect them. And then we were trying to see, what do we do with this? So, okay, we have all these test results. What do I, as a teacher, what in the world do I do with this? So then we're really more going towards this, how do we then use these results to do something in our classrooms? So, okay, I have the previous year's scores. What do I do with this information? How do I help my students to succeed? And then beyond the crazy big tests, those huge standardized assessments, we want to know, how do I make a good test for my students for everyday practice? How do I tell if the test that the book came with is awful or not? How do I tell if there's problems? Whether there's going to be interpretation problems, whether there's going to be accidentally, I've got it set up so that my students can just choose C every time and be the correct answer. So how do I control guessing? How do I do all sorts of different things? And we'll be going into that much later into the course, but it's definitely a feature focus of this course. And then the underlying theme that you're going to be hearing throughout the entire semester is, what do we do with this stuff? How do we support student learning? What sort of educational decisions are we making with these sort of data that we receive from all these tests? All right, so a little bit about me. I know we're going to be introducing each other via the kickoff assignment in the discussion board, but I will tell you a little bit about myself. I am a doctoral student at Florida State University. I did my undergrad at the University of Florida. I taught art for a while at private schools, and I was an aide for pre-K during my practicum. I currently am a doctoral student and also a master's student. So I'm a doctoral student in educational psychology, and I am a master's student in instructional technology. So we have an interesting sort of mix of things that we cover in my educational psychology program, and it has led me to help work with the professional development on the different programs that Florida has to create for continuing education. So I helped with the Math and Science Next Generation Sunshine State Standards, and I currently work also to help develop curriculum for a special government thing called iPads, where they have to submit all sorts of data about the institutions. Okay, so that's me. Oh, there we go. Yeah, I'm a glutton for punishment. I'm getting that second master's degree. But really, my interests lie in motivation and time management, using persuasive technology, which is kind of a fancy way of saying, how can I get you to do something via little blips on the screen? If I send you an email at the right time of the day, will I get you to do something? So that's sort of what that means, but that's where I am in my sort of education. I am working on my PhD. All right, so office hours are kind of an interesting little thing for online courses. I have decided that I am going to have a Skype username. So my username is EDF4430. if you find me on Skype, I will be on Saturday nights. I did choose Saturday nights because the majority of our big ticket assignments are going to be due on Saturdays at midnight Eastern Standard Time, or 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So my office hours are going to be from 8 to 10 on Saturdays, so I will at that time be online, Skype, but I'll also be checking my email if you don't feel comfortable Skyping me. I also have an office at Florida State, so I am in 3210F. If you are on campus and want to meet with me, we can always arrange something like that. So please, please, please feel free to reach out if you have any questions for me. And you can see my email at the bottom of the screen. Also, it's in the Blackboard instructor information contact info stuff. Okay, so our syllabus, we have a fairly easy to understand bunch of things going on. We've got homework. Don't have a lot of homework, but we do have some. We have a lot of discussion posts, so it's sort of like a participation-esque grade. We have quizzes. We have group teaching, and that's going to be in a couple weeks where we go through the different types of items that can be involved on a test, and you guys are going to teach each other and use discussion platform to initiate conversation about different items. So we're going to be talking about that in depth when it comes up, but not there yet. We have several other big projects: the test plan development project, the performance building project, the signature assessment project, and then we have drafts. So there's going to be 3 drafts of the test plan development project. There's 1 draft of the performance building assessment project. Then you have 3 exams and the subject pool research. So the subject pool research has its own little sort of section on Blackboard that I've put out information on it and links to the subject pool. So feel free to do that whenever throughout this semester. I believe the subject pool opens next week. I'm not exactly certain when it opens, but pretty soon. Okay, so I wanted to spend a moment now talking about the discussion stuff. The idea that we have going in discussion is that the original post will be required by Wednesday at 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and then everyone's post will be in by then, and then to do a secondary post, not so much a post, but a follow-up on someone else's, so another student's post. So if you would leave a question in your first post, the one that's due on Wednesday, for people to answer by Saturday, that would be, a nice way to do this. Sometimes, questions aren't so easy to create. Sometimes it's more of a commentary that arises. So if we can try to get that together, we're going to be starting that in the second week of class. Again, it is the second post due at midnight Saturday, or 11:59 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Saturday. So the sort of way the course is mostly working is that I will have almost all assignments due Saturday night, giving you Sunday to be free to get ahead if you want to. Everything will be posted by Monday, if not before Monday, but I will be sending out the sort of week beginning announcements on Mondays. So that's the way our course is going to be working this semester. The required course textbook is the Macmillan Classroom Assessment Principles and Practice for Effective Standards-Based Instruction. We are also going to be having some additional readings by Kubison and Borich and Popham. These are going to be really helpful resources. Kubison and Borich are very math-based friendly people. So they are going to be in the latter half, or actually more the middle half of the course, where we talk more about math concepts. And they write very clearly about math concepts, and I'll be explaining it too. just as a sort of a credential, I have a certificate in measurement statistics, so I have a fairly decent understanding of math, and while it doesn't come easy to me, I think, potentially more qualified to explain it for that reason. Popham is a sort of veteran teacher. He is very good at a lot of different things. We had his book about a year ago. It just had a little bit too much in it, so we're taking bits and pieces out of these two other books. There'll be, selected readings, so to speak, and they'll be posted for you online. The schedule itself has a KB or a P to designate when those sort of readings are required. Macmillan's book, on the other hand, is just a very, very good, grounded read, and it does Bloom and the different sort of objective writing so very well that became the required textbook for this course. Okay. Oh, this is what happens when you forget about things. So yes, there's 2 posts, and we already went over this. All right, so actually talking about this stuff, we talk very often, and we'll be doing it almost an entire week on learning objectives. But objectives are really important, what I want you to get out of something. So we will see something like SWABOT very frequently, so that students will be able to do something. I want you to be able to, understand these practices, and I want you to identify types of educational decisions made with assessment results. This is like the crucial aspect of assessment. I need you to be able to understand what in the world you do with these results. Where do I go with them? That is like quintessential what this class is about. All right, so when we talk about assessment, we talk frequently about some formal thing that we're trying to do with the variables. And then we're generally using tests as a tool for assessment. It would be great if we could just, individually assess someone with some, with their experience and looking into and having them demonstrate their mastery. But frequently we find that to do that effectively and efficiently, we need some sort of standardized test or some similar test given to all students to sort of weigh whether they know what they're talking about or they missed out on something. If your instructor, the author of your textbook, Macmillan, he's really sort of taking the angle that it's a process. And this is a very, very helpful way of thinking about this, that this is a process, and it's to take these results that you get, this data, to inform your teaching, and then check back with the students and say, okay, hey, that's it. This is where you're going wrong. I can see it right here. Let me fix this and help you understand this. This is sort of the model that we like more as teachers, that we want students to be helped with assessment so that our decisions that we spend time on instruction-wise are driven by data. We're not just spending time on things that, hey, you already know this, let me tell it to you anyways. Well, that's a distinct waste of time. Why bother? So here we are saying, okay, well, I see that you're missing, Y out of XYZ. Let me spend more time on Y and get you proficient in that. So that's sort of where we're going with this. We're generally talking about tests and assessments. They're giving us a single sort of mark, some A, some B, some number that tells us your proficiency. And that's not always the best way of doing things, but it is a very common way of doing things. And what we do frequently is then make a decision. Okay, you understand this material, you hit this threshold, okay, you got it. Or you don't. You need to go back to remedial something rather. We make some sort of decision and we do some other action. Okay, so again, assessment is a process. We use instruments, we use tests, we use observations, we use all sorts of different things, performance assessments, portfolios. We're going to be talking about these in depth throughout the semester, so if you're not that familiar with what they are, don't be too worried about it. But we're using all these different tools to help us. So then we evaluate this material, and we also include some other stuff. So the idea that people are not kind of in a silo, there's a whole lot of different community factors, parental factors, economic factors that are just going on also that can sort of influence what's going on with students. I see that 3 is kind of off the, sorry about that. So then we make, some sort of decision based on the information we gathered. So we generally use this information to diagnose students. We are going to talk about IEPs in the future, but we do a lot of gathering of information to help find students' weaknesses to help inform an IEP. We monitor student progress. We do this all the time. That's technically what the point of grades are in a class, right? We assign grades, which is supposed to motivate students, but I have some wariness in saying that that's always what it does. Grades are supposed to, again, provide evidence of student mastery. They're not always so great at that because your grade is only so good as your rubric and your test that you created was. All right, and so it's supposed to then also sort of determine instructional effectiveness. So that's back on you. Were you good enough at delivering the content that your students got it? Well, sometimes yes, sometimes no. And so this can be a couple of things. It can be, hey, I need to spend more time on this, or it can be also a judgment about you and your teaching. So it's kind of two different viewpoints that we sort of use instructional effectiveness, but it depends on the sort of point that we're trying to get across. So we're also using it now to influence public perception, and that's a little interesting. We have then sort of stereotypes or stigmas associated with A and F schools, and so that is getting at this sort of evaluation, and we're trying to do this accountability measure. There's a whole lot of legislative action that's getting us into accountability, and we're going to be talking about some of those movements in minor details, but in general, we are trying to sort of make a statement about the students and sort of open the lid and show this wider world what we're doing and put it, a microscope on everything that we're doing. We also very much so are using tests to evaluate teachers. So you'll see your formerly FCAT, but now FSA is part of the VAM, the value added model, and part of the tenure and promotion and raises that it's part of the sort of criteria that goes into making decisions about you as a teacher. And then also we're looking at this to look at your instructional intention. Are you teaching to the test? Are you teaching for mastery? Are you trying to sort of balance mastery and performance? It's kind of hard to say always, but we try to clarify what exactly you're doing with some of the assessments. Okay, so I want to stress it again. They are only tools. You can misinterpret the data. If you're not trained in understanding what you're reading, if you don't know what the distributions are that they're based on or the variables that can influence a test, then you can very much so misinterpret a test. And we see it all the time in US News, or just on the nightly news or something where the results were misinterpreted or selectively not representing the information you want. So we have to think about this. All right, so some of the factors that are affecting usefulness of tests, just the people writing the test, the people taking the test, what in the world is it supposed to do? So what's the point of the test? Is it the point of the test accurately matched up with what it's supposed to do? Whether it was created for, if a test was made for someone in the Deep South and has a lot of cultural references, if I then go take it up north, will those people understand those cultural references? Probably not. And so you have sort of an issue that's underlying the test that's not got anything to do with your students particularly, except for the fact that they don't have exposure to this cultural Deep South references that might come up, or even language that might be written into the test, and then you don't know as a student what in the world this means, and therefore you don't do well on the test. That's not accurately reflecting you as a student so much as it is reflecting something about that test. Okay. So we have generally two big purposes of testing. We have summative assessment and we've got formative assessment. Summative assessment is not always our friend. It is the ultimate measure. It is the sort of end of the unit, big ticket test. So end of a unit, end of the year, some sort of standardized assessment that measures everything. Well, those are all summative. The highest point, we're summing the mountain. Whereas formative is a teacher's friend. This is our day-to-day bread and butter sort of testing. I give you a quiz and I sort of make a decision based on that quiz that, hey, you don't understand this, we need to spend some more time, or hey, no, they've got it. And I really like this quote that when you're tasting the soup, it's formative as you're cooking it. Okay, well, this needs some more salt. Or no, this needs some more time. The carrots are too hard. They're not cooked. Whereas when I serve it to you, that's summative. I can't take it back at that point. Okay, so this is a nice handy little chart that tells you sort of the things, the testing, the products that are formative versus summative. So we've got our quizzes, our Venn diagrams, writing stuff, exit tickets. That's all formative. Summative, we've got the whole end of unit stuff, the SAT, the accountability sort of things, whether you're hitting benchmarks or not. And then you have this sort of middle gray area that's talking about, well, hey, you can use both to assist you in future lesson planning, or both to help you with student feedback. And we're going to be talking about this in far more detail very shortly. Okay, so insofar as assessment types go, we also have these other. We have norm reference tests. We're going to be talking about them almost. Norm reference and criterion reference tests have an entire week devoted to them later in the semester. But we have these sort of norm reference where we're comparing people against some sort of average group of people. We have criterion reference where we're saying, hey, this is the benchmark standard. If you don't get this question correct, that means that you can't go on. Or let's say if you don't pass the grade test with 80% proficiency, you can't move on to the next grade. That is a criterion-based idea, that you are comparing something to some sort of standardized measure, mark, criterion that you have going on. It's an absolute thing. You either got it or you don't have it. Okay, so, and then we have CBM. And CBM is becoming a very friendly measure in the schools. I hear far more about CBM now. And they're really brief formative assessments where we use them to inform instructional decisions. So CBMs are sort of the hallmark when we think about formative assessment, and that's something that is very much so stressed in the schools, that you should be using CBM. Okay, so I'm not going to go through all of the standards for competency, but this is sort of a measure of, or a checks for you all to understand why in the world we care about this, classroom assessment to begin with. So on your general exam, we have distinct sections that are on aspects of classroom assessment. So on item responses and item analysis, and how in the world, what do we do with these educational decisions? So this is all part of, really what is considered a good competency for a teacher. It's coming out of the AFT, NCME, NEA, the whole standards that we have for what good teachers should be. So there's a whole lot of stuff, and a lot of this more or less boils down to the idea that our states have criteria for teachers, and a lot of that sort of feeds into this. What is considered a competent teacher is someone who is a creator and user of data. And that's sort of what I get out of all this, the administering, scoring, the knowing what to choose, sort of appropriate measures to select for the decision that you need to make. In the schools, more and more now, you are being required to, use whatever testing kits the schools have, but you have to be able to understand how to administer the test and give the students the test, and then how to then score and interpret the results that come out. Sometimes you'll have a school psychologist that's really on staff at your school and can help you with this, and sometimes you don't. So you need to be prepared for the times that you don't have any support staff, and then you have angry parents that want to know, why is my student, being held back, or why are you suggesting the school psychologist or reading specialist needs to be with my child? Well, okay, let me explain to you this data and what's going on with your, the son or daughter, and I want to be able to give you the tools as an instructor. I want to be able to give you the tools that when you're in that position, you don't freeze up and say, I need to go talk with my supervisor. It's, no, well, hold up, let me grab their file. This and this and this and this are telling me that your son or daughter is needing some skill in something, or they need extra practice in XYZ. And they're not able to keep up with their peers, or whatever it may be, that you have some way of talking and getting through these results with parents and with school administrators and the school psychologist and whoever it is that might be asking you for this information. And students ask you questions too, depending on, their grade level. All right, so let's keep going. When we talk about the purpose of testing, we're trying to get sort of an objective set of information. We're trying to then inform decisions. When the kind of decisions that we're trying to get at, though, are generally instructional. So do I need to spend more time talking about formative assessment or not? So do I need to revise my instructional plan for this semester right now? Do I need to revise it for next semester? Hey, I tried this new activity in my class and it really didn't go over well. I need to write notes and say, hey, let's not do that again, or we need to revise it, or something. Some sort of instructional decision is generally what we're doing the most frequently. All right, so we do a lot of grading decisions. We say a lot of stuff in syllabus. Also, here's a plug. Please do check out your syllabus. There's a whole lot of information in it, and it'll be very helpful for you to know all of it. But insofar as grading decisions go in our educational decisions, we're looking at attendance frequently, participation, behavior, and effort. We're going to be talking about effort in grading, and it's hard to do effort, but like I said, in the semester we're going to talk about effort grading later. But insofar as grading goes, we Florida State instructors have to have a whole sort of laid out plan of what goes into your grade, right? Is attendance part of it? Is behavior insofar as participation on time, is that part of the grade or not? Is effort going to be included in the grade? It's supposed to be spelled out. You should have a good idea of what's going into a grade. We also use a lot of diagnostic decisions more and more, especially in the K-12, or not just K-12, but kindergarten through elementary, a lot of middle. There's a lot of diagnostic decisions that happen in those sort of initial years about student strengths and weaknesses, about potentially nipping issues in the bud, diagnosing visual disorders and attention disorders, and does the student need to be pushed up a grade, or do they need remedial action like immediately so that they don't fall further behind, or do they need reading help, and so on and so forth. We do a lot of diagnostic decision making, especially when in these years we generally see a lot of IEPs form. So we do spend a lot of time making diagnostic decisions. And then there's some of these other decision types. So we've got selection. Do I let you in a program? Should I move you to the next grade? I don't know. I'm going to have some data and make a decision. That's a type of educational decision. We talk about placement decisions. Are you best suited for algebra? Are you best suited for statistics? Are you best suited for algebra 2 or geometry? What initial place should I set you into when you transfer into the school? So that's a placement decision. That's definitely coming after you've already been accepted, though. And then there's a whole lot of counseling stuff. The DAT is a test that's given every year. It is sort of a precursor to the RTI sort of stuff. We'll be talking about that next week. But we do a lot of counseling guidance decisions based off of DAT as well. All right, so we've got more decisions, program curriculum decisions. That's generally the district level stuff. You might be invited to do this sort of altering of the curriculum sort of decision once you're a fairly well-established teachers, especially if you are doing really well on your VAM and insofar as your evaluations as instructors go. And then we do a lot of administrative policy decision stuff, which is, above us particularly, but it is regarding special funding, graduation, promotion decisions. What sort of standards do we need out of our graduates? What is the benchmark that students have to hit for promotion to the next grade? So that's generally above us as teachers and down in the field people, but these are all types of educational decisions. All right, so let's wrap it up now. Please get your introductory survey. It's sort of a web link to Qualtrics. That's for me, and I'd like to know some of you better. The introductory post is a discussion board based posting, and it's got the instructions on the post. You're generally just answering a few questions, one of which is I'd love to hear your absolute worst and your absolute best experiences with teachers. So that's part of it. And the next week's reading to get done is chapters 4 and 5, which I will be posting online. But that's really delving into the issues of RTI, as well as the Kubison and Boric reading, which I'll also post, which is pages 57 through 70, but it's really just like part of the chapter on RTI. So we're going to be talking a lot more about formative and summative assessment in the next week.